team that is engaging with all of the partners. I think I have seen some of you who are here before when we approached the CPRs, asking for your inputs about our event, may it be content-wise or participants. As already outlined by Ming, our goal is basically to engage people who can work with you later on. So it is our expectation that some or if not all of these inputs that the FBOs have generated can be followed up later on in your respective AMS or in the ASEAN context in general. Before I talk about the discussion on before I talk about the specific inputs on the blueprints, I just want to outline what transpired during the discussions. As you all know, the blueprints are a very expensive document, and despite and we actually was benefited by the presence of Mr. Lee Yung, who gave like a very comprehensive presentation about what is ASEAN community and what are the pillars and what we are trying to aspire to be. And then we also tried to make sure that we have a summarized version of the blueprints. Despite all that, everybody was finding it a bit difficult to try to follow all of the action lines, and that's, I think, very normal and actually very encouraging, because these are faith-based organizations and these are academicians, but they are sitting there and they're trying to understand this document that is not immediately relevant to their, or obviously relevant to their work. And as they found more, they realized that this is indeed relevant. This is indeed something that is going to impact their realities, like in the grassroots. And so they were exerting a lot of effort trying to grasp what it means to be ASEAN One community, what are the action lines, and what they can contribute to it. So I think by in saying that, what I'm trying to underline is this group is really excited, is really willing to work with you in realizing all of the goals that we outlined as one community, some things that we want to achieve as one community in 2025. So with regards to ASEAN political, so basically what we discussed was about, first of all, what are their areas of concern for each pillar? What are the things that they want to know more? And then the next step is we ask them what will be their potential contribution to ASEAN should ASEAN choose to engage them. And then the third one is basically more like a brainstorm in which that the organizing committee then try to identify possible ways that ASEAN may want to consider in engaging this group further. So for the ASEAN political, for the ASBC, the highlighted issues of concern, things that they would like to know more or contribute more, is on human rights and anti-corruption action lines. So they really want to know the regional strategy on human rights protection, and also how to contribute to the peace-building processes that are existing in the region. They also want to seek the clarification on the HIMS strategy in securing resources to manage transnational security issues such as extremism, in order to make sure that their own effort is in line with what is happening in the neighboring states. But for anti-corruption, however, I think I need to underline this. For anti-corruption, however, it's very interesting, because what they're saying is we can actually help, because most religions advocate for not stealing. And through nurturing the spirituality of the believers that belong to their own group. They believe that this can actually contribute to the efforts or the action lines that are attributed or that are designed to eradicate corruption in the region. So what are their potential contributions according to their perspective? They say that they can actually mediate social conflict. Some participants, like for example from Nahdlatul Ulama or Muhammadiyah, said actually they've done that in the local context or even like in a regional context. They also say that for some religions they have placed women as active agents for peace building, and this is actually a very important actor to be engaged in making sure that if there is a conflict in a society, then the peace that is being built will be sustainable. The other thing is what Ming already mentioned, which is because the religious communities are actively involved in charity-based work or responding to disaster, then they actually already have resources and experiences to provide humanitarian aid. And most of them do not dispense assistance based on religious groups. Some groups cited, for example, in the case of the Aceh tsunami, for example, in which multiple charity groups from multiple religions actually came, regardless whether they're actually Muslim or not, whereas as we know, Aceh in Indonesia is majority Muslim. And then they also, again, as I already outlined before, they outlined about like their potential to be utilized to promote anti-corruption values and good governance values, and also their potential in countering and assisting in the efforts, ASEAN's efforts to counter extremism through educating youth and disseminating values of moderation. The suggestions for engagement with groups represented by the participants are basically an amalgamation between the observation of the organizing committee and the inputs from the participants. And some of these suggestions are basically because we realize that if the, for example, for APSC, if the organs in ASEAN that are relevant to that pillar actually engage actively with these FBOs, then the efforts or the action lines that are in the blueprint can be more amplified. For example, like this, there are a lot of different initiatives that are already happening in different countries, but they need to have somebody to help them to be a hub, to learn from each other's experiences in building peace. And this is something that maybe ASEAN can assist in engagement between different initiatives from FBOs in order to encourage peace. And this is the same also for the transnational crime. The FBOs are already, for example, if we're talking about trafficking, a lot of religious groups are actually involved in rehabilitation of victims and so forth. And this is also something that can be considered for ASEAN to coordinate or to encourage conversations between all of the CSOs that have positive contributions to elements of tackling non-traditional security threats in order for them to coordinate and also to learn from each other. This is especially very important when we're talking about transnational crimes, in which that because it impacts, the impact is trans-border, then it is also very important for us to have a concerted effort not only at the government level, but also at the CSO level. Again, for natural disasters, also if the FBOs themselves actually already have their own groups or organizations focusing on humanitarian aid, and if their efforts can be coordinated at the ASEAN level, it will amplify the regional response to disasters. Now, the next point is actually something that you will find in all of the pillars. Basically, because in the discussion of all of the pillars, the FBOs and the academics all voiced the desire to be engaged more with ASEAN in a more systematic manner. So the provision of a regular space for FBOs, or actually CSOs, to engage with ASEAN organs is something that you will find as amongst the suggestions for engagement in all of the pillars, that, including the two that we are about to present next. The other thing that have been echoed also especially when we were talking about political and security, is the necessity to know each other. Because it's very hard for you to say to other people, you must love your neighbor if you don't even know your neighbor. That's the difference between, I used to live in a village in North Sumatra called Siborong-Borong. And I know all of my neighbors, and if something happened, we will help each other. Now I live in an apartment, and I really don't know my neighbor. And if something happened to me, I probably wouldn't call the next door neighbor. I will call my, like the security officer downstairs with my telephone, my internal telephone. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is, if we want to build a one community that is peaceful, it has to start first from us knowing each other and accepting each other, as already mentioned by Min. And interestingly, all of the participants kept on saying that we really need more people-to-people exchanges, and not only at the government level, but also at the CSO level. We really want to know their context. We really want the Indonesians want to know what is it like to be Muslims in Cambodia. You know, the Buddhist Cambodians said, yeah, but what's happening to the Buddhists in Indonesia? Or like, how do you manage the majority-minority interaction in your country? Things like this. And this is very interesting to see how the spirit of wanting to know your neighbor starting to grow, and ever increasingly throughout the 2 days conversation. The other one, I know probably, this is actually voiced by the participants, is the necessity to share knowledge. Even if you can't facilitate physical exchange, at least make sure that the information is there for people to be able to learn from each other's initiatives. And also make sure there is a channel of information in which that all of the ASEAN initiatives that are relevant to the FBOs can be accessible to the FBOs. And this is why amongst the suggestions, the participants are asking, is it possible for ASEAN Secretariat to consider facilitating in its website a freedom of religion portal in which the FBOs can communicate with each other, disseminate knowledge especially on peace initiatives or economic initiatives, so that this exchange of knowledge later on will contribute to peace building, nurturing harmony, and encouraging common understanding between the different groups. Now, the ASEAN Economic Community. Now, the highlighted issues of concern, the ones that the participants want to know more, want to be engaged more, is about good production and labor market, environmental and economic sustainability. And this might be interesting until, for me at least, out of my own ignorance, I thought that, wait, this is faith-based organizations and they're talking about like labor market, economic sustainability. Until I realized that that's how they engage with their stakeholders. They give capacity building to unskilled workers. They assist their people who are impacted by natural disasters, that therefore, or other people who are impacted due to natural disasters. Therefore, they have sensitivities about the necessity of environmental sustainability. And of course, because of their charitable work, they are very sensitive also about poverty and welfare gap. So those are the things that they are actually concerned about the region and would want to engage with ASEAN to tackle these issues. And they also want to understand more, and this is very interesting. ASEAN Economic Community, I think, is the best written blueprint, the best developed, the most detailed blueprint out of the 3 blueprints. And I think this blueprint, the ASEAN Economic Community blueprint, it already outlined basically the strategy that the community wants to achieve in 2025. But I think what the participants want to know is a clearer understanding about those strategies and where they can contribute there. And again, when we were talking about ASEAN Economic Community, the discussion about corruption also came up, in which they say that, okay, it was already there in FESC, but in the AAC, this is also, of course, very important for us to contribute to fighting corruption. They are also keen to contribute in measures to promote responsible businesses. They want to engage with engage with CSR initiatives in order to amplify their work in giving capacity building, seed money for SMEs, and so forth. With regards to potential contribution for AEC, I think there is some overlap in from the previous slide. Again, they want to be, if they are willing to be engaged in providing training programs and education for unskilled manpower, vulnerable groups, economically disadvantaged people and communities. They highlighted the fact that they have a reach in more remote areas because of their extensive network, and they say that for capacity building to remote areas, they actually can give positive contribution. And also, they want to participate in the advocation or the advocacy for recognition and adoption of labor standards that are beneficial to all AMS. With regards to suggestions for engagement with groups represented by the participants, again, it's more about whether it is possible or not for bridges to be built between their economic initiatives and the relevant ASEAN bodies that can actually help in order to ensure that their initiatives will be integrated and will be coordinated so that it will have a positive impact at the regional level. So this is why we enlisted some of the possible organs that might want to also engage with FBOs in implementing the action lines that they already commit to in the AEC blueprints. Now, with regard to the environmental protection, it is very interesting. Some of the FBOs highlighted also their role, for example, in the haze crisis that occurred in the region. And they say, like, we want to be involved too, should ASEAN be willing in the effort to either prevent the haze or in overcoming or managing the adverse risks of the haze problem. Now, suggestions from, and also we say that, again, as I mentioned before, there was also a call for to form a bottom-up platform for the people to engage with ASEAN. But again, this is something that we already know that ASEAN is always take things in a stride in a careful manner. So they also realize that this is something that they can only achieve progressively. At one point, to have like a more definite channel from people to access to ASEAN, rather than from people to IMS and then to ASEAN. Again, also, they also would like to have a facilitation on a regular platform to facilitate engagement with, so the ASEAN can engage with FBOs to discuss economic challenges and how FBOs can be engaged to overcome them. Now, for the socio-cultural community, the highlighted issues of concern is that the participants identified that diversity is a social capital, although it is also a source of tension amongst communities in ASEAN. But then that makes them even more aware that they have the strength in promoting learning, understanding, and accepting diverse backgrounds within their communities. So they can contribute in promoting values of moderation, in assisting their believers to be open to accepting those who are different. And again, one of the concerns that they highlighted during this discussion is they underlined the desire to be addressed by ASEAN more directly, so that because the blueprint was the socio-cultural blueprint is less detailed than the other blueprints, then should there be more details identified, then they would like to be considered specifically on their role, their potential role in assisting ASEAN to achieve the goals in the action lines. For the potential contributions for ASCC, FBOs again say that they can assist in mainstreaming ASEAN relevant topics, including integral values such as unity and diversity, moderation, from primary education to higher education. This is especially the case for example, in the Indonesian context, in which that the religious communities actually have foundations that have schools from basically playgroup until university. But what is interesting here, when they talk about ASEAN relevant topics, they don't only talk about these values, but they also talk about understanding the other countries, understanding the other context. This is interlinked with the second point, in which that FBOs and academia could also promote introduction to other IMS cultures, because only by that, by doing that, we can facilitate further appreciation and then can be united in our diversity. And they also highlighted that at the regional level, they have the capacity to encourage and intensify and expand interfaith dialogues to generate a sense of oneness and cooperation. And therefore, ASEAN University Network, for example, may be encouraged. This is affiliated to, this is I think annexed to organization, to take an active role in promoting unity and diversity in higher education, for example. Other ASEAN organs, for example, could also consider discussions on the role of FBOs in promoting unity and diversity. And it can be also considered to have an ASEAN association of FBOs that is established formally to facilitate engagement with ASEAN, becoming part of the Annex 2 organization. And the other one that is interesting is a suggestion to have like a desk or like a liaison officer in ASEAN Secretariat to work and coordinate with FBOs, so that they are kept updated with information that is relevant to their work. So in conclusion, the active engagement of the participants in the conversation actually evidenced their positive interest in actualizing ASEAN, one vision, one identity, and one community. I thought it was originally my thought, but then if I'm not mistaken, this is actually something that I heard in one of the summer institutes that HRRC hold. Summer Institute is our training or discussion forum we dedicate for ASEAN human rights related organs to discuss with experts on pertinent issue. And we do this annually. And in one of them, I think one of the keynote speakers said that ASEAN is like an arranged marriage. One day you sort of like sleep, and then you wake up, and then you find out like, yes, this is your husband. Congratulations, let's build a household together. And you're like, but who is this? You know? And but that's, I think, the reality. Like in Kuala Lumpur, late last year, suddenly there was an announcement basically saying, there you go, now you're one community. So we basically slept, we woke up, we opened the newspaper, and we found out that the 10 of us are married. Now, the good thing about this event is, from all of these participants from different contexts, different religions, and as you know, the faiths are basically one of our most important identity markers in this region. They're actually very highly interested to know who they are married to. And they actually understand that in order for our household to prosper, for our household to survive in this global context that is ever-changing with its myriad security and economic threats and potentials, they have to live along, get along with each other. And that's one sense that we get from this event, that they're actually excited to be married to the people that the governments married them to. So this is actually a very good thing, and something that maybe you in your capacity can capitalize in further engaging the CSOs. Also, they should be, this group that we invited actually are aware of their strengths and limitations in promoting unity and diversity. So they don't say that they want to be the one who actually implement the action lines by themselves, but they actually seek your guidance and your engagement to do so. ASEAN relevant bodies also could consider how to further bridge identified knowledge gaps and to utilize these potentials in realizing their plans. This one is actually highlighting the fact like this. During our discussion, some of the participants are calling for things that are either actually already described in the blueprints, but they didn't know that it was already described in the blueprints, or asking some things that probably wouldn't be feasible in ASEAN context. But these comments are basically, it's basically rooted from the desire to know more. And we have to be fair. Like it was a 2-day event. Of course, they wouldn't memorize the blueprint, as I'm sure all of you do. But from all of their questions, it's more not about the challenge, but it's about that we have these knowledge gaps. Please help us to understand about your plans and help us to know, guide us so that we can contribute to your plans, because we think that those plans are good, because we think that higher regional integration is actually a good idea for us. We also think that effective coordination across the blueprints is essential to ensure peace and shared prosperity, reduce economic inequalities, and heighten shared regional identity. And this is something that we realize because of the limited time. The initial discussion was, we split the groups into 3. And then so one group talk about this pillar, the other group talk about this pillar, the other group talk about the pillar, and then we made a plenary. And it's very curious to see that some of the groups are saying, yeah, but like for example, like in the AAC, like, well, how about anti-corruption? Yeah, but like in the APIC, actually, there's already anti-corruption. Yeah, but that's not in the that's not in the AAC, for example. No, in the AAC there is 2. Yeah, but then socio-culturally, there is also an impact of corruption in the region, and it's and then we realized that the lesson from all of this confusion is that if the blueprints are run as 3 different projects rather than 3 things that should complement each other, then the blueprints will not be achieved at all by 2025. So that's the lesson that we got. But we are also confident and we have faith that, of course, IMS already ensured this effective coordination. Participants also commend the ASEAN 2025 blueprints and express commitment to contribute in their implementation for the realization of the visions expressed in the Kuala Lumpur Declaration. And this commitment is actually very essential for the region to address numerous challenges such as development gaps, labor and social conflicts, and corruption. And also they have provided preliminary ideas on how they could assist furthering in ASEAN goals, both domestically and regionally. So lastly, I think as a last input, I just want to underline that ASEAN may benefit from closer engagement with these groups, establishing closer partnership and collaboration to achieve the region's goals and aspirations. These are the groups that are ready to be engaged, either by their respective IMS or like ASEAN, by ASEAN organs, and they do have a lot to offer. So that's basically the end of my presentation, and I thank you for your kind attention.